But I had a coach that always told me I would get concerned. I'd start to worry about things, right? And she would say to me, Claudia-Jean, you can't decide there from here. And then, she taught me to pause and take a few deep breaths and to ask myself, in this moment, what do I need? In this moment, I need nothing. All my needs are met. So in this moment, there's nothing to be concerned about. Therefore, I don't have to worry about over there down the road. And then the other thing that I ask myself is it true? Is it true in this moment? And usually those two questions can ground me back into the present moment, which, as we know, is really the only thing that exists.
Welcome to Season 3 of Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we empower, inspire, and uplift women to be the goddesses they truly are. I'm your co-host, Julietta, the magical PT, owner and founder of Body and Soul PT, as well as Soul Candy, intuitive, handmade, and one-of-a-kind jewelry and artwork. I support people in finding the magic within themselves, creating balance in their body and soul.
And I'm your other co-host, Graciela, published, award-winning, and professionally certified portrait photographer specializing in boudoir and personal branding. I create portraits of who you are and not just what you look like so that you can become who you've always been. Join us each week as we sit down for a heart-to-heart chat, sharing stories and insights with listeners across the globe. Laughter and tears alike abound as we access ancient wisdom in modern times through unique and exciting storytelling, supporting you on your life's journey. Welcome to the circle and enjoy the show. Is it normal to start the show laughing? Hi, everybody.
For our show, yes. Laughter abounds. Isn't that in our intro?
Right? This is true.
It's absolutely part of our show.
For those watching on YouTube, you might get to see us a little bit before we start talking, but I promise you, right before we start talking, there's a lot of ridiculousness going on, which is always awesome.
So keeping it fun.
Every time. What's up with you? Tell me something new and exciting.
Well, I don't know that this is new and exciting, but my whole world revolves around my work, because everything that I do for work is something that I'm passionate about, I enjoy. So it's not really work. And I dislike the word work, but
yes,
what I do, the magic that I do. And the last few weeks, one thing that's been coming up, because it's one of those things, it's it comes up with one client, and then of course it comes up with another, and then another, and then another. And oh, Angela, I love you too. We just had a comment come up. Someone's watching in Italy, so this is awesome. But when so the thing that's been coming up repeatedly, I'm I got a little off track there. Hello. Reel it back in. So we all judge ourselves so easily, so readily. It's just second nature to us to judge. But when I ask someone to acknowledge themselves for how amazing they are, acknowledge themselves for their accomplishments, it's it's so difficult. And what is that about our human existence that makes it so easy to judge ourselves and so difficult to acknowledge and appreciate ourselves? I want that to switch.
I don't know. And I don't know if it's, we've talked before about I call it the reptilian brain, the part of your brain that looks for the negative because it's the danger, which is what keeps you alive, which perpetuates the species, right? So I do think that there's a bit of survivalist, evolutionary brain function type stuff that always looks for the negative. And also, I think that we get programmed in a certain way too, right? I know for me personally, I have a lot of, what's the word? To borrow a word from my 13-year-old daughter, imprinted ideas that self-acknowledgement is interlaced with narcissism or being egotistical, right? Where where is the line between appreciating yourself and loving yourself and all that and being egotistical and having it be something negative, right? And so since we can't figure out where the line is, we're just going to make it all bad, So any self, appreciation is just all bad, I mean, that's what comes up for me, personally.
Yeah. And that's something I do tell my clients, you can appreciate yourself in a humble way. Like it's not bragging, it's not being boastful or narcissistic to acknowledge yourself and appreciate yourself. Like we need to do that. Our heart needs to do that. Our inner child needs that. And it also, like, you get to choose to do that so that other women can choose to appreciate themselves as well. We get to break that imprinting and that cycle that's been created in our human existence and shift that. So
Yeah,
I appreciate all the wonderful things that I do in this world, including creating this fun podcast.
Woo-hoo! The more you appreciate yourself, correct, the more it gives me permission to appreciate myself. So as much as we're constantly pulling each other up, I think I get just as much like movement forward and evolution in watching you be your best self, right? Because when I look over and I'm like, damn, look at Julietta, she's kicking ass today. She's putting out so much on social media. She made 10 malas. She sold 7, like, you know, stuff like that. Like your paintings, look at the paintings behind you. Like when you're giving yourself that, when you've given that to yourself, it really makes me go, have I given this to myself? Did I miss, you know, am I leaving myself behind, you know? And that's got all kinds of layers to it, but
I want to add one more thing to this before we bring our guest on. But the other thing that I always remind my clients is if you can see something amazing, wonderful in somebody else, you can only see it because it exists in you too. And so that's why I love, like, you know, when someone gives a compliment, you know, the response is, I am because you are.
it's true.
You can only see that in me because it exists in you. So yes, like let's raise us all up by appreciating what we see in ourselves, and also recognizing when you see something wonderful in somebody else, you can only see that because it exists in you.
Truly. And receiving that, right? Like receiving is just as much of an exercise, right? I'm the very first person that if you give me a compliment, I'm like, oh, you're being ridiculous. Like, oh, no, it's not true. You know, and then inside I'm like, wait a minute, it is true. I am awesome. Okay. All right, fine. I have to talk myself.
Good exercise. You get a compliment, just say thank you.
Just say thank
you. Don't try to minimize the compliment. I still fall victim to that once in a while, but I really try my best to just receive a compliment.
Beautiful. As for someone who loves to talk so much, there is so much beauty in just the quiet, right? I'm going to practice, Juliet. I'm going to practice. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
My name is Erin Copeland, and I was the sole caregiver for my husband, Jerry, when he was diagnosed with cancer, underwent multiple surgeries, and a successful liver transplant. My best-selling book, Welcome to Caregiving, The Things Caregivers Never Talk About, is not a guide on how to be a caregiver. Instead, it's a Thank God I'm Not Alone book. I'm here to help soften the journey because there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's only love. You can buy my book on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook versions, and sign up for my weekly newsletter at erincopeland.com. Check out the show notes for details on the upcoming Fort Lauderdale live event, because it's all about love.
All right, let's bring on our guest, Graciela.
Here we go.
I need a drum roll for this one. Welcome to the show. One of our famous listeners.
Yes, you ladies make me crack up while I'm walking, and I feel that people think that I might be crazy because I'm laughing at nothing, but it's all worth it. It's all worth it. It's a great show.
We're so encouraged, and we did give you a shout out on one of our other shows. So if for those of you listening that know Claudia-Jean, check out our other episodes too, because she's famous in there.
Well, I'll practice. Thank you.
There you
I'm
go.
already practicing. Thank you. I will accept that compliment.
Beautiful. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Claudia-Jean, and I want to ask, have you ever felt like you weren't being heard, Graciela or Julietta? Have you ever experienced that in life where you just feel like you weren't being heard? Yeah. I spent most of my life like that I didn't feel like I was being heard. I didn't feel that my boundaries meant anything. And as a result, I started to study human behavior and communication for many, 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 many years because I wanted to understand what was happening. And, there's so many great tools out there. There's so many great tools that help us learn more about ourselves. And as I was looking at this, I was like, wouldn't it be great if we had a tool that not only taught us about ourselves, but how to quickly interact with other people to identify how they prefer to be communicated with and to quickly interact with them. And out of that, I took all that great science that's out there, reverse engineered it, and created chat, the communication system. That's one of my businesses. And then the second business is I help empower women reconnect, and there's a key word there, reconnect to their authentic voices. And I don't say find or, or any of that verbiage, because when we're all born, if you think about it, when you come out, what do most babies do when they're born?
You cry.
They cry. So
That's
clearly
beautiful.
we have a voice when we're born, and through conditioning and our good meaning parents and neighbors and friends and educations and all that conditioning, sometimes we get a little disconnected from who we truly are. So that is my other passion, is helping. Specifically, I focus on women to help them reconnect with their voice so they can live an authentic life and help create some change.
Beautiful. You are speaking our language over there.
Isn't she though?
Yes, she
I
is.
told you I loved Claudia-Jean.
Can you please share one of your success stories with us?
It's been very interesting. I'm so excited to be here with you too. I love your show, and I knew the questions, and then you sent me the questions, and I have to tell you, I have been like really marinating on them and trying to tell you like what would be the great success story. And I first thought of a CEO client that hired me, and then I thought, let me switch it around a little bit, because there's also times that we learn from not just great experiences that are pleasant for us, but some other experiences that are less pleasant, right? And but mostly this goes back to my mom. I would have to say, because she's the main reason behind my business, my mother. And growing up, in my teens, I was definitely rebellious. I didn't think so at the time, but I recognize now I was definitely rebelling, even in my teens, even though I felt like I wasn't being heard. I was definitely a rebel. And then as I got older, I had some anger towards my mom. My mom had tried to commit suicide. And I had some anger because I didn't understand mental health and I didn't understand all that when I was going like in my mid 20s to 30s. So there was a lot of anger there for me. And then as we approached later on in life, I started to understand that everything that my mom did was teaching me something. And when we fast forward to the end of her life, where I got to be her caregiver towards the end of her life, I watched my mom for the first time in 85 years find her voice. And it reminds me of the work that I'm doing. And so you can understand that my mom spent most of her years in a wheelchair. She was a stay-at-home mom. She raised 4 children. She didn't finish her education. She came from an adopted family. And my mom has never, at the funeral, person after person stood up and said, oh, my mom was so great. She was so loving, and she never complained about anything. And everybody kept saying that. And I found myself quite annoyed by that, that people found my mother to never complain and to always be so gracious. And I thought, and my mom had told me, because she felt like she was in a wheelchair and dependent on other people, that she didn't really have the right to have a voice. So to watch her after all the years, closer to her passing, find her voice, and to watch her take a stand for herself is probably one of the best success stories, because I was there with her, and she's the reason for all my work to empower women. And, regardless of your situation, I hope that women find their voice everywhere.
What an incredible gift to have the perspective that you have of your entire life and how your emotions towards your mom has evolved in so many different ways, right? And then to be able to have that moment with her, or beyond a moment, but that time with her where she found her voice, how glorious. Like that's the best part.
Yeah. And it's that old saying, it's never too late, right? Like, it's never too late. And to watch my mom take back her power and stand up for herself, I mean, still thinking of it now, it's going to make me tear up, because, And I'm glad people experienced as my mother as this loving, caring person, because she was in essence, but the part that I wasn't okay with was that, I really, so to know that she actually got to stand up and take her power back and stand up for herself at some point, tells me that no matter where you are in life, there's still room for it, right? Like it still could happen if you're somebody who is struggling with that.
Yeah, and that it's not mutually exclusive, like you can still have all those beautiful accolades of being gracious and being kind and all of those things, and stand up for yourself and have your voice, right?
Yes, I love the yes and. I'm all about that. Yes and let's go. Yeah, and it was interesting because I look back on my childhood and up until this point of where I am today. And I do feel like we have some experiences that are pleasant and some experiences that are less pleasant. And as I grow older in my, I'm able to see the gifts in almost every situation. Now, I haven't discovered all of them yet. There's still room, right?
There's always room. There's always room. What is one piece of advice given to you by a woman that has greatly impacted your life? Tell us that.
Oh my goodness gracious. Listen, I have been blessed with so many awesome women in my life. This is really hard to pick one woman. Wow. I think I had a couple of choices for this. I think the one that's calling to me today, based on the conversation that we had earlier, is I had a coach. I think coaches are great, or a mentor. And like I said, I've been blessed with many of them. But I had a coach that always told me I would get concerned. I'd start to worry about things, right? And she would say to me, Claudia-Jean, you can't decide there from here. And and I was like, oh, I can't decide there from here. That makes complete sense, right?
Wow.
Like, and then, she taught me to pause and take a few deep breaths and to ask myself, in this moment, what do I need? In this moment, I need nothing. I have a roof over my head. I have food in my belly, right? Like all my needs are met. So in this moment, there's nothing to be concerned about. Therefore, I don't have to worry about over there down the road. And then the other thing that I ask myself is it true, right? So, because then the mind can take you on a whole wild journey, right? Of all this judgment and all the, right, what you guys were talking about on the pre-show.
Yeah.
And so is it true? Is it true in this moment? And usually those two questions can ground me back into the present moment, which, as we know, is really the only thing that exists, right, Julietta?
It's the only place to be, right here, right now. There is nowhere else.
That's true. This moment.
And I know Julia's going to kill me for talking so much, but I have to, it's the words bubble in me. Sorry, everybody's just going to have to deal with it. But, I just had it, like, you just blew my mind with that. Say it one more time for me again. You can't do there from here.
You can't decide there from here.
What that made me think of, so one of my limiting beliefs is about, how great can I be and how great can my business be? And gosh, I don't know, just when you said that, it made me think, so often, and I try and just say this like myself, right? I'm sure someone else has this experience too, but I think, could I really be that great? And it just, the way you said it just made me think, well, why don't I just go ahead and be that great and then I'll judge it from there? like, I don't know. You just blew my mind, woman. You just blew my mind. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. I mean, this is what it's about, right? As you said, inspiring. What both of you were talking about is being able to see in Julietta, all those things. And as she says, I am because you are, right? That was what she said before. So it's really about, as you said, Graciela, is about lifting each other up. It's about right now in this moment, I had that, but I've been with you where I've had a moment and you lifted me up. I know you know what I'm talking about when I had my little breakdown, right? After my photo shoot. So, and then you reminded me, and so this is what's so beautiful about being there to support each other and to recognize that, we can't do this alone. This journey's not meant to do alone.
100% correct there. And, that was part of, this whole podcast started because there we were in the middle of a pandemic and we couldn't get together with our friends and we couldn't do all these things that we were used to doing. And how do we create connection when we can't actually physically be there together. And so while I always prefer being in person where I can hug people and touch people, but, this creating connection to so many women through this podcast has been amazing.
And then it's all over the world, Julieta. Like, that will never cease to blow my mind that we have listeners all over the world. It's just so exciting to me.
The one that's recently just got my mind went, someone in Mongolia is listening to us. I'm like, how did they find us in Mongolia?
But what's encouraging to me is that it tells me that the messages that we're sharing here are universal. It is not just the American experience, it's the human experience. And it's not even just, even though we say voices of the goddess and we really lean towards, a divine feminine, the messages really are for anyone, gender neutral, right? Like, it really is just about being a human.
Absolutely. And, you and I have talked. I was an exchange student. I lived in Venezuela for a year. That was amazing in itself. But what was extra cool about it is while I was an exchange student there in Venezuela from the US, I had fellow exchange students from all other parts of the world. So I didn't get to just experience the Venezuelan culture, but got to see points of view from all over the world. And I mean, the world is changing because of the internet. I mean, I lived there this was in 1986. Like, we weren't emailing anybody then. We weren't talking on cell phones back then. Literally, I would talk to my parents once a month on the phone because international phone calls were so expensive then. But learning, the lesson that it taught me was that we are all human. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what language you speak. We are all human. We are all one. And we are meant to be here to support each other and lift each other up and connect and love each other. And yeah, all day long. I'm done. That's it.
I usually would say thanks for coming to my TED Talk when I say things like that. But Claudia-Jean helps folks put together their TED Talks, don't you, woman?
I do. I've had the honor of helping many people from all over the world as far as China. So that's been very interesting. I've had one of my person that I coached, he actually crossed over to, and he has over 1 million views and got signed by a speaking bureau. And then another one of mine actually crossed over to TED and got a TED Talk, which is incredible because you can only be invited to a TED Talk, right? That's the difference between the TED and TEDx. TEDx are individually organized, and TED is an invitation that is very prestigious and very limited. And so it's been great helping people spread their message. I love to work with people who are up to change, who are up to big things, who are up to creating conversations that you normally wouldn't have access to that could change the world, to exactly what you said, right, Julieta, about recognizing that we're all here having this human experience and we all want the same things, right? It's to be valued, it's to be heard, it's to be loved, it's, all of those things. So yeah. It's an exciting part of my life.
Love it. Love it. All right. I think Graciela and I love to read, and we're building a library of amazing books that everyone should read. So what is your contribution? What is a book that you wish every goddess would read, and why?
Okay, this question has kept me up.
It's hard to pick one. It's hard to pick one.
Yes. I mean, Julieta, I'm a person, and Graciela may or may not know this, but I have 6 books going on all at one time. I feel most at home when I'm in a bookstore. Yes, I'm secret. I'm that person, right? I love books. When you asked this question, I went back and forth. I was first on Michael Singer, which is, the surrender experiments, the tethered, living untethered. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, the Celestine prophecy. No. I have to do the Celestine prophecy. And then it was like, no. You have to do the 4 agreements. No. Oh, the alchemist. And I mean, literally, this has been going on in my head, all these crazy books. And then I thought I settled. I had my very, very, very first coach over 20 years ago. Her name is Leanne Wilson. She had this program called Life Shaping. And it was the first time that I was introduced to this thought of that I'm already okay. exactly how I am. I was like, what? Mind blown. She blew my mind. We're still good friends. She's still blowing my mind all these years later. And she had recommended The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And I was like, that's the book. And then as I was journaling this morning, I got it. I got the clarity. The book that I would have to recommend because of the podcast, right? What we're talking about here, the vision and mission of your podcast. The book that I choose is The Artist's Way. The Artist's Way. And the reason that I picked that book is that is the book I still journal every single morning. I have to tell you, for me, journaling is cheaper than therapy. By the time I put down the pen, I either feel completely grounded or I have the answers that I was seeking. And the way that I picked up that daily habit was from doing The Artist's Way. So The Artist's Way is a book that spreads out over like 7 weeks. And every day you do an exercise that has you look at yourself. And not only did I pick up the journaling, which has been an instrumental part of my well-being, like really getting to know myself, really being connected to source, right? Whatever that is for you. And it really grounds me. But it also taught me how to date myself, because the book encourages you to take yourself out on dates.
That's beautiful.
And I started to learn how to date myself. And right now I am really good at dating myself. And
that's phenomenal.
I feel like for me, when I have come into this place and space of that I truly love me, right? When I recognize that I can take myself out on dates and that I'm really good at it, and my self-value, my self-worth has increased, it makes it almost impossible for someone else to come in that's below that level, because I go, I'm already doing all this for me. What value are you bringing in that can help lift me even, right? Because I believe partnership's all about expanding each other to be better people on a regular basis, challenging us to be the best version of us. And so that book, The Artist's Way, is really what helped me discover or reconnect with my true value, my true self-worth. And so if I had to say one book, if I had to narrow it down to just one, it would be The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
I love that. Just on a side note, because it's been coming up in my awareness after the channeling that I did last week. I don't even remember how long ago it was now. I have a blog page called julietta.love. But in there, one of the blogs that I wrote I called it Relationship Math, where in relationships, 1 + 1 needs to equal greater than 2. Because if not, then it's not what a relationship is meant to be. Because me being in relationship with you, I should help make you more than what you are by yourself. And you should help make me be more than what I am by myself. So the sum total of our two parts is greater than what we are by ourselves, and greater than just the simple sum of the math. So yeah, what you were speaking to there was all about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's gorgeous.
Thank you. And it's really true. There's that old saying is you can't really love somebody else until you love yourself. I never we all get, like, I got it in concept, like it sounded good, but now that I really love me, like unconditionally, right? I mean, I have my bad days, don't get me wrong, right? We all do, right? It's called the human experience. But now that I really love myself, I understand that the version of me before this really, 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 really could not love somebody else. I wasn't able to love somebody else at that capacity.
Yeah. And one of our, you mentioned the word value a couple of times, and that's came up in an earlier episode. And we made the distinction between self-love and self-value. Because I think, you can always say, well, I love myself. I mean, I love myself. I get up every day and I move around the world, and right, that's love. I love myself. But self-value, like, you're setting the bar. This dating yourself thing, like, I'm loving this concept, because you're right. Like, I'm already feeling this way. This is how I deserve to feel. Now, what will adding someone else or some other project or some other avocation or whatever add to that, right? Because I already have this established level of value. I think that's so powerful. I love how you share.
Thank you. I love that I'm here with you, beautiful goddesses, sharing this. And I hope that, I hope that it makes a difference to somebody. I hope they get whatever message that they need for the day. Because, that's really what it's about, right?
It really is. And even if we hear the same message in a couple of different ways, it doesn't blow your mind till it blows your mind. So we're just going to keep on going.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite questions is to share with us a story of a risk that you took, something that you will never regret, something that maybe you were a little hesitant on. A lot of our listeners are going through different things and they're wondering, should I take this leap? Do I take the next step? What do I do? So give us a little inspiration.
I know this one's I know. I always tell people, when I'm coaching them, I say, the more uncomfortable you are, the more excited I get. And I know that sounds like a crazy lunatic, right? Like, they're like, what? And I'm like,
Perfect.
Because I know you're about to have a tremendous breakthrough. So as I'm sitting here and you're asking that question, I can feel my stomach, like all these butterflies are lit up in there. So I would have to say I was at a time where I didn't love myself as much as I do now. It was in 2021. I was in a relationship and I lost myself completely to that relationship. I let my business go. I fell in love with the other people that were involved in that relationship. There were children involved. I probably stayed in it way too long, way longer than I should have been in it. COVID was also happening at that time. And I had this dream, right? There was a very public asking for marriage and there was a lot that was riding on it. I felt like, the ego part, right? There was such a public proposal that, oh my gosh, there was, and then there was this, but I love all these people that are in my life because my entire life, I craved family, being part of a tribe, being part of a family. And there was that pull, right? And then there was this pull of that I wasn't in the best relationship for me at that time. Right. And being in that relationship, I became kind of dependent on that person. And I lost everything that I had. And I had a choice to make. I could stay where I was and commit to that to the rest of my life, or I could jump out of a plane without a parachute and choose me for the first time in my life. I've chosen me before in many different situations, but this was a level of that I knew that if I made this choice at this point in my life, I was never turning back. I was never that level of acceptance from me, right? Because I own all of that. It's all me. I own it. But that level of acceptance. And so I ended that relationship. It's a public relationship. So to fall out of it, it has some serious consequences, right? And some things that I can never, that's stuck out in cyberspace, I'll never be able to take back. But I have to make peace with it and I have to own it, right? Because at that time, it was a decision that I made. And then I recognized that decision was no longer good for me. It was not in alignment with really who I am. And I decided to go. So that looked like me leaving a state, coming back to Florida with basically nothing. And starting at 50 years old, starting all over again. And I do not regret. I couch surfed for 8 months. I lived on different people's houses while I tried to find an apartment. There was so much going on. And then rebuilding my business that I had let go of because, I thought I made other things priorities besides myself. And thank you, Robin. So it just, for me, that's something that I will never regret. As painful as it was looking back to the person who I am right now here with both of you and whoever else is listening, I have zero regrets. Zero. Because who I am today is so much bigger than I even knew at the time that I made the decision to jump without a parachute. I had no idea, as my coach, Coach Charlotte is on here. She always tells me, Claudia-Jean, your mind doesn't know, right? She always tells me, would I give a 5-year-old the keys to my Bentley, right? And then she tells me that she explains to me that the mind only knows, it's a historian. It only knows your past. It has no idea of your future, right? And it wants to keep you safe. Its job is to keep you safe. So it identifies everything and then tries to size it up and figure out how to keep you safe. But what she goes on to tell me is that the mind has no idea of the unlimited possibilities, that the magic that can happen, right? The miracle that can happen. Even right now, I can get off of this and I can get a phone call that changes my life. I can buy a lotto ticket. The mind has no idea of the unlimited possibilities that are out there. So if I had listened to that mind back in that day, I wouldn't be here today. So that is a risk I would do again. Hashtag, I would do that again.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. As you were talking, it reminds me of the Robert Frost, two roads diverged in a wood. I took the road less traveled, and that has made all the difference, because it's so easy to stay in the comfort, but all the excitement is in the discomfort. It really is. Every time we keep seeing it over and over again, right? And I love that you said you get excited when your clients are uncomfortable, because I don't know if you remember, but during your photo shoot, I also tell my clients, if you feel awkward and it feels weird and you're scared, then perfect. That's exactly how you should be feeling. That's where the good stuff is.
Yeah, right. As you say in all your prep your clients, right? That's leave a little room for magic, right? And I use that even with my clients when I'm coaching organizations and corporations. And I say, you have to leave a little room. Yes, we have an agenda, but the agenda has to be flexible so that we can accommodate what is happening in the space that we are co-creating. I'm facilitating, but it's a co-created space, right? Even in your session with Julieta, what she does, it's all co-created. And again, see, we don't do anything alone. We think we do things alone, but we don't. So
True.
So true. So true.
My name is Erin Copeland, and I was the sole caregiver for my husband, Jerry, when he was diagnosed with cancer, underwent multiple surgeries, and a successful liver transplant. My best-selling book, Welcome to Caregiving, The Things Caregivers Never Talk About, is not a guide on how to be a caregiver. Instead, it's a Thank God I'm Not Alone book. I'm here to help soften the journey, because there's no right way, there's no wrong way, there's only love. You can buy my book on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and audiobook versions. And sign up for my weekly newsletter at erincopeland.com. Check out the show notes for details on the upcoming Fort Lauderdale live event, because it's all about love.
So it is time for us to wrap up the show. But what we would really love is you would leave us with your sweetest, most delicious memory, because we're making a bank of them and we'd like to put yours in there.
Okay. I love that. My sweetest, most delicious moment. I would have to say a very uncomfortable conversation with my two boys. Through my work, I recognized that I had been living out patterns that I learned that were unconscious through my mom about needing a man and choosing a man. And that, because that was my belief that I needed that in order to be to be safe, to have the necessities, and it was passed down. And through one of my coaching, my hypnotherapy sessions, I recognized that that's not the truth, that's not my truth. I had been conditioned that way. And once I had that, there was this overwhelming sense of responsibility to my two sons. So I sat them down to have a very uncomfortable conversation, because I tried to practice what I teach, right? And live in alignment and in integrity. And I sat them down and I explained to them, I went through this hypnotherapy session. This is what I learned. And that I apologize if I hadn't shown up in life the way that you deserved me to show up for you in those moments. And that now that I know it and I have this awareness, I promise you from this day forward that I will do better. And I didn't want them to wait until the end of my life. Both my parents, we had very uncomfortable conversations that were extremely healing for everybody involved, but it took to their end of their life. And so what I wanted my boys to know was that I wanted them to know that they have permission to have those conversations at any point of our life. And if they had anything that they felt resentful for, confused by, had questions around, please don't drag me to a Jerry Springer show or Dr. Phil show. Let's just have that conversation, now. And let's do it sooner than later. Because my one regret of having those conversations with my parents was that I didn't do it sooner, because I didn't get to enjoy the full potential of our relationship until it was too late. So I wanted to make sure that my sons know that. And in this moment, here comes the most delicious part about this. Both my boys looked at me and said, Mom, you did the best that you could. That's in the past. there's nothing we can do. And we are grown ass men. So from here on out, we get to decide. And I was like, huh. It was one of the most freeing, generous, compassionate conversations I've ever had, to know that my boys get it. And I'm excited to see what's possible for them. Because as you mentioned, right, breaking cycles, I would say mission accomplished, hopefully.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What a gift.
And what an amazing show this is, because it will live for eternity. But wow. That's all I have to say about this show is wow.
I know, right?
Thank you so much for joining us, Claudia-Jean. So happy that you came and spent this time with us, and excited for our listeners to take a listen to this episode, because it's
hang out in our Facebook group, Circle of Goddesses. Claudia-Jean will be in there, and you guys can chat with her and follow up with her and comment about the show. Let's really get our community in there, because this is not the end. You know, when we have these shows, the beauty of it is that we get to continue to connect, you know, and we get to continue to support each other. So I am super excited. Thank you to all of our guests that popped into the chat today. We so appreciate all of your feedback. And Claudia-Jean, you have absolutely a beautiful tribe following you. We can see them. We appreciate them. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate them as well. So I don't know who's with us today, but thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to Julieta and to you, Graciela, for doing this kind of work and making this kind of information available. I know that you're changing lives. You've changed my life. I listen all the time. So.
all right. Thank you so much. And I think it's a wrap.
All right, kids. We'll see you at the next one.
Bye.
Thank you, dear ones, for joining us today. Make sure you check out the show notes for details on how to get in touch with either Julieta, Graciela, or today's special guest. Don't forget to subscribe, review, like, and share.
Big love and gratitude for all of you. May the path before you be ever illuminated by your fellow goddesses. Shine bright and have a magical day.